Well, hey, good morning. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Got my cup of coffee this morning as we continue in our journey through the big picture, the entirety of the Bible. We are in a little book, the book of Ruth, just 4 short chapters, a particular story. And it's actually interesting, and it goes right along with where we've been. The last couple of weeks, we've looked at the Judges, where everyone did what was right in their own eyes and that sort of thing. And in that particular time period, the book of Ruth opens. It starts by saying, in the days when the judges judge. So Ruth, her story, what happens to her happens in the midst of everything that's going on in the book of Judges, which means that cycle we've talked about, that disobedience and the chastisement or the punishment or the judgment of God through foreign countries, other people coming in and oppressing Israel, followed by their crying out for a deliverer and God raising up a judge to deliver them, only for them shortly thereafter to slip back into idolatry and unfaithfulness, to start the whole process over again. It's that particular time frame when this happens, and maybe what that gives us a clue to is the opening chapter of the book of Ruth that says Ruth had to leave Israel because there's a severe famine. It's actually a little bit of a play on words. Bethlehem is where Ruth lives. Bethlehem, obviously a pretty important place as we get to the New Testament, Bethlehem where Jesus is born. But the city of Bethlehem, the word itself, Bethlehem, means the house of bread. And there's a famine. So the one Ruth who lives in the house of bread has to leave because there is no bread. It's an interesting play on words in the Hebrew of the story. She leaves Israel. She leaves the breadbasket of Israel to go to a neighboring country of Moab. She takes her whole family there because actually her husband and sons go with her. So maybe they take her there. But however it is, she ends up in Moab. And while they're there, her sons marry Moabite women, which makes sense as they get older and there's a looking for wives. That's where she is. They marry Moabite women, and then tragedy strikes. First, Ruth's husband dies, and then both of her sons die, and so Ruth is left a widow with no male sons. And in that culture, being a widow with no male heirs is a very precarious position to be in. So she, in that moment, decides to go back to Israel, to go back to Bethlehem. That's where her people are, hoping that she has connections, she has relatives there that will take care of her. And as she's on her way, she tells her 2 daughters-in-law, the widows of her sons, that they should stay behind. They're Moabite, this is their people, this is their land, they should stay. And one of them does, but the other one, the book of Ruth, the one who it's named for, Ruth, declines to stay and pledges her allegiance to Naomi. And in chapter 1, verse 16, kind of one of the, you might say, famous or better known verses of the book of Ruth, Naomi says to Ruth, go stay with your people. And Ruth's reply is, don't urge me to leave you or turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. And where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. It's actually, like I said, one of the more well-known verses, and it's actually sometimes, interestingly enough, used in weddings, that the couple pledges to have that kind of commitment to each other, even though it comes out of a much different relationship of a mother-in-law with her daughter-in-law. And so Ruth stays with her. She goes back to Israel with Ruth, with Naomi. And this is just a remarkable thing because it's a rather extraordinary decision. Ruth chooses to leave her homeland, to leave her culture, to leave whatever extended family she has, to follow Naomi back. And Naomi has nothing. In that culture, in that day, Naomi had no claim to anything. Without a husband, without sons, she was going back and was going to have to be totally dependent on her townspeople, on her kinfolk, to take care of her. And Ruth says, even though that's the case, I'm going to go back with you. And what's remarkable is this story of Ruth in the midst of, we're just several books into the Hebrew Bible here. We've looked at the Torah, Joshua, the conquest of the land, Judges. There's some remarkable stories in Judges, though we didn't look at them. In that time when Ruth's story is written, it's not a story of miraculous deliverance. It's not a story of amazing, undeniable moments where God intervenes in unmistakable ways. It's the story of a very simple and faithful and loyal decision by this one woman, a Moabitess, a non-Israelite, who says, I am so committed to you, I'm willing to leave all of this familiarity and follow you. By the way, that's a theme we've looked at elsewhere in the scriptures. That's what Abram was called to do when he left his homeland to go to the land that God will show him. And Ruth does similarly the same thing, although she has a human to go with. She has Naomi to go with. She has that person to go with. And Naomi gets back and she says, no longer am I going to be called Naomi. She changes her name to bitter, a word that means bitter, because she's so bitter about her circumstance. And yet Ruth goes with her, thinking that this older woman, this woman without a husband or son, maybe Ruth can be a source of strength for her. It's a simple decision. It is a remarkable decision for many ways, but it's not a miraculous thing. It's not an intervention of God. It's just a faithful moment where Ruth declares her allegiance to Naomi and to Naomi's God, and she goes back and does that. We're going to look next week at something else that happens in this story, but I'm just going to stop right there because I think that's a pretty good place to stop. Because while I always am amazed when God does remarkable, even miraculous things to deliver, to take care of his people, there are countless stories like Ruth's that are simply lives lived in faithfulness, making simple, faithful decisions, little things that seem maybe insignificant at the time, but the faithfulness that she demonstrates in this pays off big. God honors that faithfulness. Who doesn't want the big miracle? Who doesn't want the big splash and dash, the signs and wonders? And there are plenty of those in the scriptures. But God honors when we make these simple, faithful decisions. How much does God honor it? Well, this young woman, Ruth, shows up as one of only 5 women that Matthew lists in the genealogy of Jesus. I want to jump ahead so bad and talk about that genealogy because it's remarkable that it references some people here in the Hebrew Bible. Ruth is one of them. Not only is she one of 5 women, and by the way, women were not mentioned in genealogies. It wasn't important, the woman, but in the genealogy of Jesus, Matthew makes sure to include 5. He also includes 2 women that are not Israelites, that are not Jewish, that come from other faiths, other cultures. Ruth being one of them, Rahab being the other. She's the one in Jericho that helped out the spies, and they rescued her when they conquered Jericho. They made sure that she and her family were saved because of that scarlet cord. So we didn't touch on it, but those 2, Ruth and Rahab, show up, and Ruth becomes just a few generations removed from King David. She's in the line of King David, and if she's in the line of King David, that means she's also in the line of Jesus. Jesus fulfills the ultimate messianic promise and hope of the Hebrew Bible, and this person, Ruth, shows up in that. Not because she did anything amazing, not because she did anything miraculous, but because she did something simple by faithfully sticking with and vowing her allegiance to Naomi and to Naomi's God, and that God honored. I think it's the same way with us. Most of our lives, it's not going to be big flashes of miracles. It's going to be simple, daily, faithful steps. And sometimes those are hard to take. I can't imagine the conflict that went through Ruth's mind as she contemplated leaving all that she left to follow a woman that she wasn't related to by blood, that she didn't share a culture or a faith with, but was willing to give all of that up and take that step of faithfulness, loyalty to Naomi, and God honored that. God honors when we take those simple, faithful little steps, those everyday things that maybe nobody else notices, but God sees and he honors it. One of the reasons we think church is so important, and I don't mean coming on Sunday and sitting in rows and talking, but being involved in church, building relationships in church, hearing the word proclaimed, worshiping together, getting together with other believers to discuss who God is and what he reveals us in his book, the Bible, in his word, the Bible, is because it helps us, encourages us when we need to take those simple steps of faith, of loyalty, of trust, things that seem huge at the time, things that don't maybe make sense at the time, but with the encouragement of other Christians, we can take that step of faith. And like Ruth tied herself to Naomi, we can bind ourselves to other believers to help us take those steps. I think growing in faith as we seek to follow Jesus is best done together. I talked about it last Sunday when we finished up Amos. I want to reiterate that today, and I probably don't say it enough. The communal aspect of faith is really what helps us stay strong in the midst of so many things that pull us away from God. It's other believers that we've built relationships with, that we trust, and that we commit to, that help us take those simple steps of faith and loyalty, just like Ruth took, that God honored, and God honors our faithfulness to him. Well, there's more to say about Ruth, kind of a cool little cultural thing that has big picture implications for the story of Jesus, but we'll cover that next week. Right now, I'm going to leave you. Hey, Ruth is only 4 chapters long. Maybe between now and next week, pick it up, read it. It probably won't take you more than, it's just like 4 pages in this Bible. Won't take you more than a few minutes to read the story. Maybe read it more than once and learn how her simple faithfulness to God was honored in some remarkable ways. So, hey, join me next Wednesday. And of course, Sunday morning, 9 o'clock, we're going to be here. We're going to be worshiping together. We're going to be opening the Word again together. We're going to be learning more about who God is and trying to follow him together. We'd love to have you be a part. Hope to see you then. And if not, we'll pick up the story of Ruth next Wednesday.